All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Fred. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. And if you guys, a few people in here know me by now, I always start out with some prayer and then we dive into the work. My process, I take a deep breath, I hold it in. Whenever it just feels natural to release that air, I do, and that creates an awareness. And then from that awareness, I just have an open and honest conversation with God, inviting Him into this meeting. And so, with that, here I go. Thank you, God, for that deep breath. Thanking you, God, for getting me centered in this moment. And God, I lift this BBC meeting up to you. I pray that you bless each person that's here in attendance. Please open up our hearts, our minds, our soul, our spirit. As we talk about the fourth step, if there's any blockages, any questions, any prejudices, any belief systems, anything preventing us from applying these principles and getting down to causes and conditions and seeing the facts and getting honest, God, we ask that you unbind us, unblock us, allow us to see the truth, allow us to hear the truth in a way that it does not harm us or injure us, that we could view each life event as a learning lesson. God, help us to draw closer to you during this process and transform our life. If there's any prayers that we've put out there, God, we humbly ask that you answer them in a way that we understand. Thank you, God, for never abandoning us. Thank you, God, for being here. Thank you, God. Bless you, God. Praise you, God. All right. And so, for any of you guys that have your big book or want to follow along, we're essentially going to be starting, well, the very, very bottom of page 63. It's not going to be a facilitation, but I'm going to be going through the instruction, kind of breaking it down, sharing my own experience with this, and letting God kind of guide me on it. So after we say that third step prayer and that third step decision, the book makes it very clear that a decision is a thought that's followed by action. If I don't take the action, it's just a really good idea, really good thought. Just like we all make New Year's resolutions, January 1st, I'm joining a gym, I'm losing weight, I'm changing my life, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And the most amount of gym memberships happen in July and February, and then by March and April people stop going. And so this is not the type of decision that I could rest on my laurels or that I can make lightly. So that third step decision, how do I show God that I'm willing to turn my will and my life over to his care, is I proceed on with the next level of work, which is step 4. So the very bottom of page 63, it tells me when do I start my fourth step after taking my third step. It says next. So I start this right away. There's no wait 30 days, 90 days, go to meetings. No, it's dive right into this work. So next we launched out on a course of vigorous action. And so that word vigorous implies this is going to be strenuous. And the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. Though our decision is a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless, here's another time frame for me, at once, followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. So I can either do my fourth step next or at once. Take your pick. Basically, it means we're doing it right away. But it's very specific. It doesn't say that we are, doing this to overcome alcoholism. It says we're doing this to find, face, and be rid of the things which are blocking me. So, as we learned in the previous chapter, we agnostics, deep down in every man, woman, and child is that fundamental idea of God. It's only in the final analysis we find that great reality deep within. So, if God is within me, how come I don't feel him? How come I don't know that he's there? How come, AA is the first place that mentioned this to seek within. And they tell us in that same chapter, I can't tap into this power because it's blocked off. It's blocked off by pomp, which is ego, by worship of other things, by calamity, which is chaos in my life. So I need to become unblocked. It's like a spiritual cholesterol. And if I want to clean out my arteries, I got to clean out my cholesterol. So same thing with this. Then once I do that, my blood flows smoother. Same thing with this. My spiritual channels are now open when I do that. And it tells me that my liquor is but a symptom. So a symptom is an indicator. And it says, but a symptom, meaning it's one of many indicators. All right. And so, we all, once I put down the drink, my mind tries to get me to act out in other ways. And this is my disease coming out sideways. And so this is why it says we need to get down to causes and conditions. So it's not a strenuous effort to stop drinking. It's a strenuous effort to connect to God. All right. So it says, therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This is step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. It's an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. Okay, so I don't know the facts of my own existence. And as we read in the first page of More About Alcoholism, I live in a delusion. And as we learned in the doctor's opinion, after a period of time, my mind can't differentiate the true from the false. So I could rationalize anything and my mind believes it. My mind can feed a lie. It can take an image or a story or a belief system and run with it, convince me to act accordingly, and I'll fight to the death for this belief system, even if there's irrefutable evidence in front of me showing me differently. And the most, the case in point is when people told me to stop drinking, you're destroying your life. But drinking was my solution. I needed the alcohol as my coping mechanism, and so I could not take that away. So I start to realize once I put pen to paper that I see facts in my life. I discover the truth about me. I'm connecting the dots, and I'm seeing that when there's a very specific stimulus or catalyst induced into my life, I'm relying upon the same defects of character and I react the same way. And so the book is going to tell me exactly what I need to do in order to see this truth. And I've been in therapy for since I'm 17 years old. And that's, over 30 years now. And I've learned a lot about myself. But what I've learned from inventory, vastly overshadows what I've learned from therapy, because God speaks through that pen. Putting pen to paper, it's a magical instrument which bypasses my conscious mind and allows me to go deep within. And that's where my truth resides. That's where this power resides. And this is what I'm trying to connect to. And so the book continues. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods. So the word disclose means to uncover. See, because I have these built-in forgetters, because I have a delusionary mind, because I live in an illusion of control, my mind can't show me the truth. And so this is why I need inventory to disclose that to me. What parts of me are damaged or unsaleable? What parts of me do I want to return to my maker? What parts of me need an upgrade? It's very, very simple. But I can't make that without God's help. And it says the book tells me I need to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. So let me put that in the personal. If I want to have a happy life, I can't keep living in this delusionary world and believing the lies that my mind tells me. That's a fact. I need to be able to see the truth and to have clear-cut instructions. How do I handle the truth when it makes me feel poor, when it makes me afraid, when I feel angry? I need a clear-cut direction or a guide. That's what this big book is. So the next paragraph, we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. Okay, there's that word honest. We saw that word 3 times in the first paragraph of this chapter. So the key to my 4th step is honesty, rigorous honesty. It says, first, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. All right, so the parts of me, my character is comprised of many different assets. But some of these assets are not working as well as they need to be. They are flawed. Okay, the best analogy I like to give is I could be driving my car down the road and my car stalls. All right, do I junk my car? Do I get rid of it? Do I burn it? Do I put it in the garbage? No, I take it to the mechanic. They diagnose it. It might be one little spark plug, one wire, one brake pad, one little thing needs to be upgraded. And when I upgrade it, now all of a sudden my car is running efficiently again until a couple weeks later, something else breaks down and I have to replace that. Same concept can apply to me. All right. I don't operate as efficiently and as well as I should. I'm using the wrong power. And so these are the flaws in my makeup which have led to my failure. Okay, now the book says being convinced that self manifested in various ways is what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestations. So alcohol, drugs, the wife, the judge, That's not what has defeated me. It's self, it's me. My problems are of my own making. So I have to see, when I rely upon self will, how does it manifest in my life? What does it look like? Because I need to reverse engineer my decision making to get down to the causes and conditions. So the book tells me resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. So it destroys more alcoholics than alcohol, than drugs. Imagine that. And so from anger, from resentment, that word resentment means to refeel. And so the emotion that I refeel most often is anger. That's the one I get in touch with. And that used to drive me. So whenever I feel angry, I'm suffering from a resentment. I refeel it, and that pain gets worse and worse. And the only thing that stops that pain is a drink or a drug. Um, and the book tells me that resentment, it destroys more alcoholics than anything else, and from it stems all form of spiritual disease. For we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. All right. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. And so when people say to me, I just need to get my life in order and then I'll go through the 12 steps. I need to get my wife back, my family back. I need to get a job and then I can go through the 12 steps. Well, the book is saying that no, I need to solve my spiritual malady first, and then everything else will fall into place. It says, in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. Okay. So this is not something that we sit and talk about. We don't have a discussion. There's no self parenting, there's no group therapy. This is something I need to write out. I need to put pen to paper. It's that simple. And I'm going to list people, institutions, or principles with whom I am angry. So inventory is meant to be a spiritual process, not an academic one. There's no thinking involved. And so we start out with prayer. I start out with that third step prayer. And then I'll say a prayer that I call the prayer of protection. God, please allow me to see what you would have me see in the light you would have me see it, free from morbid reflection, fear, obsessive guilt, or dishonesty. That will be done. And it's about allowing me to see my truth without it harming me. See, when I review these painful moments in my life, I look at it like I'm an asshole, I'm a piece of crap, I deserve to be punished, I don't deserve happiness. And God would have me look at each situation as a learning lesson. Okay. What mistakes did I made and how could I correct it? How could I learn from this? How could I tap into power and overcome this? And so I need to look at this through gentle eyes, through sober eyes, through God's eyes. Like the book Chuck Chamberlain, A New Pair of Glasses. All right. My eyes are very dark, condescending, angry. And so when I do this, I can look at things differently. And so the next question says, we asked ourselves why we're angry. Anytime I see that word ask, ASK, in this book, it means pray. So again, I'm not writing down, I'm not thinking to myself, why am I angry at this person? Why am I angry at this event? I'm asking God to speak through that pen. Um, in most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbook, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore, we were burned up. All right. So this is very important because my third column tells me the most amount of information to me from my fourth step. I do an extended third column, which I'll discuss. We should have more than enough time, at least for the resentments. But everything that I list in that third column, that's telling me my belief system. See, I have belief systems, I have code of morals, I have, rules that I live by. And when other people do not live by the same rules as mine, I get angry, I get indignant, they step on my toes, sometimes seemingly without provocation. And so, the end result is I need to be able to live without belief systems. Well, that's not possible. So I need to now learn from the experience of people breaking my belief systems and seeing how I react to them. Okay, cause and effect. This is very powerful because this is how I learn about me. All right. So now we keep reading. It says, on our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations, which had been interfered with? So my original inventories, I did the Joe and Charlie worksheets and I checked off boxes and I learned nothing about myself. Today, everything gets written out by hand in full sentences. I'm taking ownership of my feelings, my thoughts, and my emotions. This is not about just filling in the blank. It's not a homework assignment. This is meant to be in depth, and that's how we do it. And so they give us, a couple of examples. And the only thing worth pointing out to this is, in the cause, no more than 3 sentences. I've seen inventories that people wrote, and they wrote full-length novels on how mom and dad messed up my life, how the boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, the ex-partner destroyed me, and I end up feeding into a pain-filled cycle of resentment, anger, rage, and fear if I do that. All right, this is about learning from it. So only 3 sentences, I could sum it up very, very easily. And then in that third column, you see that the word fear is bracketed, and because fear sets all this in motion. So we need to see which specific fear is setting each of these things into motion. So at the bottom of page 65, it says that we went back through our lives, nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. All right. So this is not about half-assing it. It's not about getting this done as quickly as possible. It's about getting this done as thoroughly as possible and being completely honest in this endeavor. All right. When we finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that the world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. So, true or false? Did I always look at it like this person is wrong? If he hadn't said this, I would not have reacted this way. If you hadn't done this, I would not have done that. So, therefore, it's your fault. If you hadn't angered me, if you hadn't upset me, I would not have reacted that way. So this is me playing that victim role. And this is a myth because I learned from my inventory that I'm not a victim, I'm a volunteer. All right. And so I can tap into power and change my perspective on these situations. That's the goal of the inventory, to look at it differently from a different set of glasses. And so to conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us got. And I wasted a lot of time in therapy talking about other people and what they did to me, and not looking at how did I react to it? How did I react to this catalyst that was introduced to my life? Um, and so this is me as the actor running the show. It says the usual outcome is that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Okay. Why, poor me? Why does everyone have to harm me? Why can't I get a break in life? Why can't I get lucky? And these are the thoughts which used to go with me constantly. And this fed this delusion that other people are going to injure me and I'm going to be angry. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. So sometimes I get resentful at me. Well, guess what? That means I'm allowed to inventory myself too. I've had people try to debate me on this. No, I've learned the greatest amount of insight into how I operate by being angry at myself and putting pen to paper so I could see the truth. What is driving me to hold on to guilt, shame, and remorse? See, if you injure me, I can let you off the hook a lot quicker and easier than I let myself off the hook. When it's me dealing with me, I punish myself, I torture myself, and I don't let myself go. It's a life imprisonment. And so I need to be able to look at me. It says, the more we fought, we tried to have our own ways, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. So if these moments were only seemed to win, it's an appearance, it's not a fact. See, there were times that I managed my life and the outcome was favorable to me, and I was happy for a moment, but then something else happened or someone else made a self-willed decision, and then I lost my spotlight and I was no longer happy. And I learned that I can't manage people. My life is unmanageable because I'm a poor manager of it. So the next paragraph, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads to futility and unhappiness. So think about these words, futility. What does that mean to you? I'll always ask my sponsees, put that in a sentence, identify with the word. Okay, for me, futility means I feel useless and my existence on this planet is pointless. There's no reason for me to be alive. All right, that's futility. Unhappiness. I do not deserve happiness. All right. That's what my mind tells me. So unhappiness is a constant state of dis-ease. All right. And that's a shitty way to live. So this is why I need to get down to causes and conditions. But the next sentence, to the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? Okay. So if I am permitting it, that means I'm a victim. I'm not a volunteer. So I need inventory to show me consistency in my decision making, and that I'm constantly making these decisions based on self, putting me in a position to be harmed. It says, with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. Okay, so what is the hope of a hopeless alcoholic? The hope is to maintain and grow my spiritual experience. Why? Because if this is a progressive disease, then my recovery must also be progressive. I need to constantly be growing. If I'm not growing towards God each and every day, I'm growing away from Him. And eventually that drink or drug is going to be a prominent thought in my mind. But the book is going to use very strong language when discussing this. It just says infinitely grave. Next sentence, we found that it is fatal. Next sentence, when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit. That means I'm in the darkness. And with us, to drink is to die. Okay, strong language. The book does not mince words. So if I am to live, I have to be free of anger. This is a must. This is not a gentle suggestion. This is a necessity. I cannot hold on to anger like normal people. It says the grouch and the brainstorm are not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, for me, this is poison. Poison kills. So now the next sentence, which is one of the most important sentences in this entire chapter, and I want you guys to pay attention. We turn back to the list, for it held the key to the future. So the key to my future is not meetings. It's not my sponsor. It's not my family. It's written inventory. Now, this sentence has been backed up by my own experience. I have seen it. Anytime I am jammed up, putting pen to paper is the only thing that works. I can spend hours or days trying to analyze my situation, and in 15 minutes of writing it out, I see my truth and I get a corrective measure from my God, and I have very explicit instruction what actions to take. And so I don't have to rely upon me. I don't have to guess, and then I don't second guess it. So written inventory holds the key to my future. And, think about a key. A key unlocks something. All right. It opens or unlocks. So the key unlocks my future, my freedom, written inventory. So now it says we were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. Remember, a few minutes ago, I talked about how I look at myself with very harsh eyes, with very judgmental thinking, and I'm mean to myself. If someone spoke to a friend of mine the way that I talk to me, I'd beat the crap out of that person, but I allow it to me. All right. This is torture. And so I need to look at these experiences from an entirely different angle. That's why I say that prayer. God, please allow me to see what you would have me see in the light you would have me see it, free from morbid reflection, fear, obsessive guilt, or dishonesty. Thy will be done.
Rich, man.
Oop, someone needs to be muted, please.
Yeah.
And then, so it says, we began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. All right. So if the world and its people really dominated us, that means I give everyone else false power over me. So if you're in my head, if you're renting space in my head, I'm allowing it. I'm giving you power to resonate in my mind, to ruminate, to rent space without paying. And I can't live like this. So it says, in that state, the wrongdoings of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. So fancied or real, whether this anger that I have towards you happened in actuality, or I'm just playing it out in my mind, it still has a reaction on my body. So scientific studies have shown that when I'm under stress, my body releases stress hormones. I get a fight or flight response, and it can lead into anxiety. It could lead into panic. It could lead into manic thoughts. So there's a biological symptom to this, which happens when my mind focuses and resonates on bad occurrences, on angry events, on things that the coulda, woulda, shoulda. And so, fancied or real, this can actually kill me. It could harm me. It could injure me. So it says, how could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered. Not that they should, but they must, because I cannot live with this. It says, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. So that means I'm powerless over my resentments. I don't have the power to let them go. I don't have the ability to change them, to stop thinking about them. When they rent space in my head, they own it. And unless I put some mind altering substance into my body, it's going to keep replaying over and over, and the volume's going to get louder and louder until I hit a jumping off point, and I'm going to drink or act out or do something foolish or impulsive just to get out of self. And this is why I need to get down to causes and conditions. I need specificity. I need precision in this process. And inventory provides that. So this was our course. So this is my treatment plan. We realized, past tense, that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Okay, so I can't, just like I can't call you an alcoholic, I can't say that you are spiritually sick because that I'm playing God. I can only diagnose myself. But I can say or postulate that if you wronged me, then perhaps you are spiritually sick just like me. And so top of page 67, okay, we're going to go a little bit slower because there's really key information in here. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. Okay, so if I've put you on an inventory, then you're in my first column. It says, though we did not like their symptoms. So if you're spiritually sick, what are the symptoms of your spiritual sickness? That's my second column. I'm angry at Steve Wood because he started 5 minutes late. Sorry, Steve. So that's the symptom of it. But then, and the way these disturbed us. So that's my third column, looking at those areas of self. How did they disturb me? I'm angry at Steve because he started 5 minutes late and this left me, with less time. It created fear. So we want to write these all out in full sentences. So I'm taking ownership of my feelings, thoughts, and emotions. So this is why he's going to be on those first 3 columns. The next word, we asked. Remember, asked means to pray. So I'm asking God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How could I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. See, when I first came in, people used to tell me, you got to pray for your resented party. Pray for the person who injured you, who harmed you. And nowhere, I'm going to repeat this, nowhere in these first 164 pages does it tell us to pray for our resented party. Why? Because until I go through the 12 steps and have a spiritual awakening, I am incapable of praying for the person who harmed me or injured me. And I remember years ago, there was a woman who came into AA and her daughter had been assaulted, and people told her, you need to pray for the attacker. And she ran out of AA crying. And I went up to her and I said, that's not AA, that's misinformation. So this prayer, it's very specific. I'm asking God to change my perception of the person who harmed me, that I can now look at them as being spiritually sick too. And so if God can change my perception, then I'm no longer going to have the same reaction. Okay, so there's a cause and effect here. I think of what you did to me, I get angry. God changes my perception and relieves my anger. So now when I think of you, I say, wow, this person is spiritually sick just like me. They're no better than me and they're no worse than me. And then I don't have that emotional reaction to what injured me. So this is why I need God's help. This is why the 4th step is a very specific spiritual exercise. And so I write out, when I get to this point in the book, before I enter the 4th column, I write out a prayer for each person. Now, God, please allow me to see that so-and-so is a child of God and perhaps spiritually sick just like me. God, please allow me to grant him, her, them the same patience, tolerance, and pity I would grant a sick friend. God, please save me from being angry. Thy will be done. And so being that I still write out my 10 steps, just like I do my 4th steps, I've written this prayer over 1,000 times. That's probably how many inventories I've written in 16 plus years. And what happens is when I write out this prayer, it becomes a working part of my arsenal. It becomes my go-to prayer. See, someone pisses me off over the course of the day. What do I do? Do I call my sponsor and, moan about it? Do I go to a meeting and vomit all over them? No. I go right to that prayer. Someone injures me, someone angers me, someone harms me. I say that prayer for them. God either removes my resentment or he doesn't. All right. If God does not remove my resentment, it means there's something I need to learn from this experience, that this person is actually becoming my greatest teacher, and I have to put pen to paper and write it out. So this becomes a clear-cut way of communicating with my God, where there's no thought process or analysis. I say the prayer, he removes the resentment. Boom, I go on with the rest of my day. 10 minutes later, I'll get my next resentment. I say that prayer, he removes it. 30 minutes later, I get another one. I say the prayer, he doesn't remove it. I'll say the prayer again. He doesn't remove it. Son of a gun. All right, I know what I'm doing tonight. I'm putting pen to paper because that's the only way I'll get free. And so this shows me what do I need to inventory and what I don't need to inventory. See, God will remove the ones that I'm not going to learn from, but the ones that I will learn from, I write about. And so at some point, I could cover my hand over the first two columns, and it doesn't matter who you are and what you did. You know, the catalyst is the same, and my reaction is the same. And so my mom passed away over 30 years ago, when I was a teenager. And every once in a while, I'll get angry at her. And I'm like, oh, come on. Long since, grieved and accepted and moved on. And I'll say the prayer and it won't go. And I'll write it out the inventory. And there's, an action or behavior that she was exhibiting that now I'm adopting in this, current landscape in my timeline. And I can't see it until I put pen to paper. So this becomes a way for God to point things out to me. All right, so next paragraph. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least, and here's the kicker, God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. Okay, so when I am hurt, so hurt people will hurt people. That applies to me and that applies to my enemy. When I'm hurt, I lash out. Misery loves company. And so this is why when I say that prayer, God's going to show me, he's going to change my perception to show me how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. So think about that for a second. Imagine if everyone that ever wronged you, every enemy that you have, that when you think about them, there's no reaction. Okay. This is what the program offers us. This is the freedom from bondage of self, that I could look at them as being perhaps spiritually sick just like me and actually come from sympathy. All right. It's a beautiful thing when I could recognize that. And I know that doesn't come from me because my DNA is anger, rage, go for the jugular, and retaliation. All right. God's is the exact opposite. So now, fourth column, referring to our list again. So we're going to put out of our minds the wrongs others have done. Well, how do I put out of my mind what you did to me? By saying that prayer. Okay, because that prayer separates me from how you injured me and allows me to look at the situation through a new pair of glasses. So it says we resolutely look for our own mistakes. So what were my mistakes? I write out my mistakes were, where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Those are four separate questions. I write those out. I was selfish by, I was dishonest by, I was self-seeking by, I was frightened by. So self-seeking, a lot of newcomers are unfamiliar with the precise definition of this. And so self-seeking, I'm doing something nice for you, but I'm also expecting something in return. All right. So if we get to the door at the same time and I hold it open for you and you go in and you don't say thank you, if I get angry at you or resentful, well, guess what? I'm self-seeking. I did the right thing. I did the nice thing. I held the door open for you, but now I'm not getting in return what I believe. So my belief system has now gotten threatened or sore, and I become burned up, just like the example the big book gives me. So that's what self-seeking is. I have expectations and belief systems which are not being met by you. And frightened. So I was afraid of blah, blah, blah. Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. So how do I disregard what you did to me? By saying that resentment prayer. It says, where are we to blame? Here's another thing I write out. I was to blame by blah, blah, blah. When we saw all faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. So faults is another word for defects of character, shortcomings, gross or handicap, stock in trade. And so I'm going to have a list of which defects of character have contributed to this resentment. And so let's say I do a fourth step and I've got 30 resentments, and each one has a list of all defects. So what I do is I write out, if God were to remove these defects of character, I would be free of this resentment. And so after this, my fourth step, I have a list of my repeat offenders. Okay, which defects were on almost every single resentment. And then I know exactly what's driving me. And this is what I need when I go into step 6. Unless I have a clear-cut roadmap, my step 6 experience is going to be grossly insufficient. So I learn it from doing inventory. So those are my faults, and it says we place them before us in black and white. So again, I need to write this out. And finally, the last two things, it says we admitted our wrongs honestly. So what were my wrongs? My wrongs were blah, blah, blah. I finished that sentence. And it says, and we're willing to set this matter straight. So how can I set this matter straight? Here's my 8th step list. I write out, I could set this matter straight by, and then I just let the pen finish. If you are unsure of your relationship with God, try a 4th step this way. Just write it out and let the pen finish. And you're going to read what you wrote and go, huh, I wasn't even fully aware of that, or wow, I had no clue this was going on inside my mind. And this is how I know that something is bypassing the conscious mind by writing it out. This is where I see truth in my own words. And so I can't blame you and I can't blame anyone else. It's between me and God. And but now that's not the end of the resentment inventory, because remember, fear was bracketed in that 3rd column. And I probably will just be able to go through resentments and fears. I don't think I'll have enough time for sex, conduct, or harms because I see the time, but I'll go till just about 3 o'clock because I want to break this down. This is foundational work to get you free. So bottom of page 67, notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of your life. So every aspect of your life has fear in it somewhere, okay? And it describes fear now as an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of my existence is shot through with fear. Why? Because fear sets in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. Okay, so I'm making decisions based off of fear and self, which set the ball rolling. So the inventory process is going to show me, how did I set the ball rolling? By making decisions based off of self and fear. The next sentence is a question, but did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Remember, we read on a previous page that I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. So what's driving me? Fear and self. Well, guess what? Fear is also selfish. So fear and self are driving me. And what happens when that's driving me? I step on the toes of my fellows. And what happens? They retaliate. All right. And then that paragraph continues. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation. So it's a perception in my mind. But we invariably find that at some time in the past, we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. So if I'm making a decision based off of a fear that I'm worthless, I'm leaving myself vulnerable to being affected by your words. So fear of being worthless was one of my root fears. That's on like 80% of my inventories. Fear of being worthless, fear of economic insecurity, fear that God doesn't love me, fear of being disrespected. And I forgot what the 5th one is, but it'll come to me later. But when I'm making decisions based off of those fear-based decisions, even if it's unconscious, I'm making poor decisions. The doctor's opinion tells me I'm maladjusted to life. I make bad choices to life. So if I'm making a fear-based decision, I'm leaving myself exposed to be harmed by other people. So I need to start making faith-based decisions. Well, how do I learn that? Learn how to do that is by reverse engineering my fears to get to the root fear. We're going to talk about that in just a second. So it says, sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. This is strong language. It's saying that fear creates more trouble in my life than stealing. Why? Because fear leads to terrible decisions. And so I need to understand the exact nature of my sickness in order to apply this solution. Otherwise, I don't know what the problem is. And this is why the inventory is so effective. So it says we reviewed our fears thoroughly. Again, there's that word thoroughly. So it's not about just listing a fear. I want to analyze it. It says we put them on paper, even though we have no resentment in connection with them. So I'm going to have two separate fear inventories. I'm going to have a fear inventory that's in connection with resentment, and then I'll have a fear inventory that has no connection to the resentment. But we're going to break down the fears the same way. So wasn't it because self-reliance has failed us? And that's a rhetorical question because the answer is yes. I've had sponsors have me write out where it failed me, but that was just information. It says self-reliance was good as far as it got. So we asked ourselves why we had them. All right, so ask is a prayer. So why do I have this fear? So let's say I'm just going to use this as an example. When the meeting started late, which I'm actually not bothered by it or afraid of it, but just to give an example. So I'm afraid that the meeting started late and now I'm not going to be able to finish my, entire fourth step synopsis. Well, why am I afraid of that? Because I want people to learn this information. Well, why am I afraid of that? Because I don't want people to get sick. Why am I afraid of that? Because I don't want other people to die. Why am I afraid of that? Because it breaks my heart hearing how other people get sick and die. Why am I afraid of that? Because I just want everyone to get this. Okay. So my root fear for that example would be fear of other people dying. But how it manifests in my life is I'm afraid of not having my full time to go through this. Um, in a number of years ago, I had a surgery and one of my sisters didn't call me and I was angry at her and I was going to kick her out of my life. And so I looked at, self-esteem, that third column, I'm a good brother. The opposite of that, fear that I'm not a good brother. Why am I afraid of that? Because I don't think I'm a good person. Why am I afraid of that? Because I'm afraid that I'm worthless. Why am I afraid of that? Because that's just how I am. So her not calling me confirmed my worst fear that I was worthless. And that's why I was angry. And as soon as I saw that it had nothing to do with her, it was all my crap, I was able to let her go. And so we always want to break it down to that root fear in order for me to see the truth. So it says self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. So self-confidence cannot solve fear. In fact, it makes us cocky. It makes us worse. So this is why I need to go back to God's help. I can't rely on self. So perhaps there is a better way. We think so. For we are now on a different basis. So remember the here and now. This is where and when God exists, in the here and now. God's not in the future because that's all fear-based, and God's not in the past because that's all resentment-based. God is in the now. So it says we are now on a different basis. What is this basis? It's trusting and relying upon God. These are two separate components. Remember, faith without works is dead. It's easy for me to talk the talk, but am I walking the walk too? That's the difference. That's what separates us, from the men from the boys. And, so it says we trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. I needed inventory to show me this, to give me this information in order for me to believe this, that I can't trust me. My inventory shows me that I'm such a poor manager of my life, and this is why I need God's help. And so I show God that I trust him, by acting as I think he would have me be. It says in the next sentence, we are in the world to play the role that he assigns. So God is the employer. He assigns me a role. Some of the roles are faithful, forgiving, loving, non-judgmental, repentant, spiritual, friendly, soft-spoken, good listener. Okay, these are all roles that God assigns me. So previously I was on the basis of trusting and relying upon self. But now it begs the question, do I really trust God? All right. I've learned from my inventory, I'm a big hypocrite. I talk the talk, but I don't fully trust God. And that's okay because I'm human. I claim spiritual progress, not perfection. So do I really trust God? Some days I don't think he knows what he's doing, and I tell him, and that's okay. Some days I'm like, where the hell are you? And that's okay, because I do have faith in him. And so I still make decisions based off of faith, even if I don't fully trust the outcome. So it says, just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us and humbly rely on him, does he enable us to match calamity with serenity. Okay, so God does not remove the fear. When I take action utilizing my free will to fulfill this role that he has assigned me, and I'm humbly relying on him, my fear gets neutralized with peace. So calamity becomes serenity. So fear gets neutralized with peace. And that gives me an opportunity to walk through the fear. Because remember, this is all action that I need to take. So it says, we never apologize to anyone for depending upon our creator. We could laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. So the word demonstrate means action. So what's an action that I could take to fulfill the role that God has assigned me to walk through this root fear? All right. And how do I get to that? Well, the next sentence is the fear prayer. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. So based off of that previous example, the fear of people dying, God, please remove my fear of people dying and direct my attention to what you would have me be. And the word faithful just came through me. So now I want to ask my God, what is an action I could take? What's a demonstration I could do to fulfill this role of being faithful? And, help as many people as I can and show them what's been shown to me. All right. And so now when I take that action, I'm essentially walking through that fear, and God will neutralize that fear. So it's not going to paralyze me, and I'm not going to make decisions based off of that fear. Hence the next sentence, at once, meaning immediately. Once I take this action, I have begun to outgrow fear. All right. So because fear is not real, it only exists in my head could recreate that fear at any given time. But once I start to practice taking the action to walk through that fear, I'm less likely to duplicate it, and I'm less likely to give it the same power over me. See, fear used to paralyze me. It was trepidation. I couldn't leave. I just wanted to be medicated. I just wanted to sleep the night away, which my body never allowed that anyway. But I just wanted to check out from life because I couldn't deal with it. Today, fear still exists, and it still has an effect on me because I'm human and I'm in touch with my feelings, but it no longer paralyzes me. All right. And so when I break down the root fear, so in my third column, when I'm writing out those 7 areas of self, those 7 belief systems, which are being challenged by this person that I'm mentioning in the first column, I'm taking the opposite of that sentence to see the fear. And then I'm asking myself, why do I have this fear? And I'm breaking it down to get to that root fear. And that's where the corrective measure is, because it's showing me I just reverse engineered. I'm angry at you. I'm angry at the world. And I just reverse engineered it to see at the core of this, I made a decision based on self, which left me vulnerable to being affected by your action and behavior and caused me to retaliate when you took your action. But the root of the problem is me. So my problems are of my own making. And I've gone so much deeper by using therapy than I could ever do with any other tool. By gone deeper using written inventory than I could in years of therapy, but this has complemented it. When I write out my inventory, I send it to my therapist and he loves it. He says to me, you just did all the homework for me. You have everything spelled out here. And then I could learn and grow from that. And the end result is I get reborn each and every day. And so it's only 3 minutes left, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I apologize I didn't get into the rest of the inventory, but this is vital. This is life-saving. This is life-changing. And I encourage everyone to dive into this. And whether you've done 1/4 step or 20, you could still keep putting pen to paper. Don't listen to the AA police that say you only write it out once. My name is Fred. I'm a grateful, recovered alcoholic.
Thank you, Fred.